The Left Wing Podcast in association with Land Rover. Whether you're headed to a match or a weekend away, there's plenty of space for your team and their gear in the new Discovery Sport.
They were O'Driscoll, Morgan, extra man is Fitzgerald. Oh, Fitzgerald is cutting back inside! Leinster have another! Darcy, O'Driscoll through the legs, Rob Carney, out to Fitzgerald again, step and score! Number 2 for him!
Hello and welcome to the Left Wing Independent.ie's rugby podcast in association with Land Rover. I'm Will Slattery and I'm delighted to be joined in studio, as always, by Luke Fitzgerald. Luke, hello.
Will, how are you?
I'm very good. Very good. A good win for Ireland at the weekend. Probably a bit more positive, I think the chat will be over the course of the show. I'm delighted to say a little later on we'll be joined by Rhys Ruddock, a man who's probably very disappointed, I guess, that he hasn't been involved the first couple of weeks. But for the moment, we're joined on the line by Irish Independent rugby correspondent Rory O'Connor. Rory, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, lads.
And on your day off, no less, the indefatigable Rory O'Connor, who I begged and pleaded with to join us, and he obliged, thankfully. Well, Rory, obviously very interesting couple of weeks now for the Irish team. 2 wins out of 2, Twickenham up next to kind of the place where, you know, it kind of became apparent in 2019 that things were very much coming off the rails. Now they go there in a completely different mindset. But are Ireland legitimate championship contenders, do you think? Or have they maybe been beneficiaries of, you know, a good start with 2 home games? How far along do you think they are compared to what we saw in 2019?
That's a good question. I mean, yeah, they are legitimate championship contenders, because in reality there's only 3 or 4 teams can win this tournament, and Ireland are, you know, in this era, Ireland are always one of them. I mean, like, these players didn't become bad players last year, they just stopped playing well, and they have won it. You know, a lot of them have won it 3 times, even more of them have won a Grand Slam in very recent memory. So yeah, of course, like, I mean, they were world number 1 last year. They beat the All Blacks twice. You know, I mean, these feats were the reason everyone was so disappointed was 2019 was because of the standards that they set themselves. So, of course they are. You know, that was always the frustration, was that they were playing below themselves. That, you know, they were a good team playing badly rather than a team that had gone off the rails. So, I don't see France doing a Grand Slam. I think, you know, Ireland may struggle to win in Twickenham. You know, I think it's going to be it's another step up, and it's another test of where this team is at. But I think there's going to be 3 or 4 teams, probably 4 teams going for the title in the final weekend. Ireland play France last. You know, it'd be a tough game, but I think they'll still be in the hunt, and there'll be a bit of bonus point stuff going on, a bit of points difference. So yeah, I think they are realistic contenders for the throne.
Yeah, it's been set up really interestingly. Like, no matter what, as Rory says, when we get to the final weekend, Ireland should still be in the shake-up, which will be really exciting. And in terms of the development of the team, obviously we sat here last week and, you know, we were a little downbeat assessing the opening win over Scotland. You know, there was definitely room for improvement. They got that improvement against Wales. But I guess, you know, if you look back to 2019, there were some false dawns when it looked like the team was getting back on track, albeit this time the kind of maybe the slightly more expansive nature of the victory. You know, they did get the ball wide quite a bit. You know, there was a few more offloads than you ordinarily see. It does appear that maybe this time around we could maybe have a little more faith that the team is trending upwards.
Yeah, well, like, I think it is probably one performance. I thought Wales were a little under par. I thought the Larmour try particularly, I mean, if I was a centre and I let him through like that, I mean, that was embarrassing. Yeah. It was an embarrassing attempt at a tackle. Like, you know, you just, an international player, the quality of Larmour.
Nick Turnstile.
Yeah, turnstile, exactly. It was really poor. I thought that the Hadley Parks try, you know, it was a long stretch, but you should probably still finish that one as well. And Wales actually played some good stuff going forward, actually, at times, I thought. And Ireland rode their luck a little bit. A phenomenal bit of play, yeah. And they had a few nice touches here and there. But look, Ireland had the majority of the game. I thought physically they looked a little bit sharper. I thought there was lots of improvement. I really liked some of the small changes. And it is amazing how a few small changes can make the difference. One of them that particularly stood out to me was the kicking from in the outside channels. I talked about that last week because I think that's something that the kicking strategy with Ireland has become very, very predictable. That's something that, if you do it well, is very, very effective. And they've shown they've got good guys out there. Like, even the guys who'd come into the team, say like Keith Earls, he's a lovely kicker of the football out wide as well. And that's something that sounds negative, but it actually can be a really good way of putting pressure on teams, because it can be hard to break them down for long periods of time. And I'm a big believer, I think, that it actually takes more out of you kind of physically attacking and getting into shape for attack than it does defensively. There's more thought required, and I think you have to work a little bit harder to do it, because no matter what, you have to kind of over-resource the ruck. You have to do it well. Like, if you do it well in attack, you'll only have 2 guys in there, but often it's hard to get those numbers right. So you often have to over-resource, versus a defender can say, oh, that one's lost, and move out and get in position. So they're kind of tiring things. And I feel like attacking kicks, which Ireland did very well in the weekend, are a great way of taking pressure off and keeping the pressure on the other team. And they did that really well. That was something I thought was very good. And I thought some of the ball carrying from the forwards, it was great to see Tadhg Furlong. I thought he had a big game, and that was great to see, because he was a huge part of what made Ireland so good. It's like having an extra ball player on the pitch, or an extra forward who was like very dynamic in an attacking sense on the pitch. Your tight prop is usually there just to hang on to the scrum, make sure you don't get pinged all day there, and provide, a good lift in the lineouts. And the rest of it, you're saying, geez, just don't be a liability in defence. But he was always a great addition. He was brilliant, I thought. I thought Andrew Conway was excellent. I thought Conor Murray looked good. A lot sharper, got the ball away, wasn't hovering over it too long. And all those things combined, I think, to make Ireland look very, very good on the day. The key part, as you say, is that I don't think we can say this trending upwards. I think we can just say, well, this is a great starting point for them to possibly trend upwards, and there's loads of things that they can keep delivering on, that maybe we could see a return to the form of 2019.
Yeah, and Rory, obviously Luke.
2018. Excuse me.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, sorry,
2019. Rory, Luke mentioned a couple of things there that were improvements, and then just from watching the game, it did look like Ireland were trying to play a little more expansively. Like, is that just my eyes deceiving me based on a couple of moments, or do you think that there was kind of signs of that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, even Justin Timberlake, I read some comments from him. He was surprised by how wide Ireland played, and Wales got caught a bit narrow. I think that was one of the big criticisms in the Welsh media about the Welsh performance, that they didn't anticipate what Ireland were going to do, and they got caught narrow. I think when you've got a back three like Ireland have at the moment, it's mad. It'd be mad not to give them the ball, and there was definitely license to push passes that maybe in previous. I think the license may have always been there, but I think there's more confidence and maybe less stress about what might come up in the video review. So when Keith Earls gets that ball, he instantly flicks it on. He's not thinking, because if you think in that scenario, you're gone, because that he would have been nailed in a tackle. So I think there definitely is an emphasis on moving the ball to width. You've also got I don't think Jordan Armour's passing the ball a lot, but he's definitely countering every time he gets the ball. I think the next phase of their development when it comes to counter-attack will be to start linking between the back three, but that wasn't something Ireland have done for the last couple of years. So I think when it comes to looking a bit wider and giving the sense that you're a bit more exciting in attack, it wasn't ever going to take that much. It was a couple of subtle tweaks and a bit of a change in shape, and it's definitely it's come to fruition early in the regime. Now Luke's kind of pointed out a couple of the Welsh deficiencies. England at home, you would imagine, will win a lot more collisions and will put Ireland under a lot more pressure in terms of line speed. So it's going to be interesting to see whether they can continue to do that, or whether Farrell has another plan for that. But yeah, these are baby steps. It's a start. The 2 games that Ireland would traditionally expect to have won. So basically, he's given himself breathing space by kind of if we presume that they beat Italy in round 3, he's won the game. He's going to win. He's basically reached the minimum acceptable standard. And anything from here is a bit of a bonus, because I think Twickenham and Paris are 2 tough places to go, particularly this season. So he's given himself breathing space to that the pressure has kind of come off, that his selections won't be questioned as much, and the players are on the back of 2 wins in a row against good opposition are a bit more confident as well, and they're starting to feel good about themselves. So Luke's right. You can't get too excited about these things. You can't get too carried away by it, but at the same time, having been pretty critical over the last year, you got to praise them when they play well.
Yeah, look, and one thing that Rory said there that I want maybe you could expand on was the linking between the back three, because that did seem to be maybe one element of it that wasn't quite joined up yet. There was once or twice where Stockdale maybe could have been released, and either his depth wasn't kind of right, or the pass wasn't great from Larmour. That's something that if they got right, there was an opportunity there that they didn't really take. Yeah,
I still think that there's scope for Larmour to grow his game. He's still young in the position, I think. He has all the abilities to do that. I think the realisation would have to come from him that linking with great players like Stockdale going forward, I mean, I haven't seen too many guys that are that much better than him in World Rugby going forward when he's in open space. that one that you're thinking about, I think we presume it's second half, the one where he kind of got checked.
Yeah.
It wasn't a great pass and he was very flat, but he should have got the ball a half a second earlier and his depth was perfect if that was the case. And he'll get the ball back from those guys. He's an excellent chipper of the ball. We've seen him use that all the time. He chips the ball back in field. So if Larmour releases that one, he could potentially get the ball back if he continues on that, continues his run on. And also remember, if you pass that before contact, you don't have to fix the guy straight away. If you pass it before contact, he can't take you out and tackle you. You can get back involved in the game, and he's got to turn around. It's something that young back three players I see a lot from them, that they don't actually release the ball early enough. It's okay to release the ball. Remember, you're alive, and the guy who's defending you has to turn around and run and catch it. So it's okay to pass it even slightly, just a slight bit earlier. Make sure you don't check the guy. Make sure Stockdale or Conway or Earls are getting that in stride and attacking at full pace. It's okay if you're not fixing the guy. You don't always have to fix him. I see lots of forwards making that mistake as well. It's amazing what happens when you pass the ball early enough and actually just you remain in a support position, and it actually brings that kicking, those grubbers and all that kind of stuff into play, because you're all chasing, you're all still on your feet, and they got to turn around. So it opens up all those options, and it does give those guys a bit more space to attack people. And I think once we've figured that out, once we can get the ball, and it's my complaint, Will, you heard me say this loads of times, I'm sure Rudds has as well, it's the playmaking outside of Johnny Sexton. It's, can Ireland find that person who's going to be the link man to open up the pitch run? If you can get the ball to your wingers, it adds another 10 metres onto the pitch. Do you know what I mean? So all of a sudden, it's all open to you. They have to defend everything. They have to make a decision to come earlier to try and close it down, which means you can go over the top or you can use the crossfield kick. But it also will open up more one-on-one opportunities for Larmour. And we can see what he can do. When he's in those positions one-on-one, he is so dangerous. And the only way I think he ever really, maximises his potential is by actually figuring out how to get the ball to his wingers. I think it'll get him opportunities as well off he'll get the ball back a few more times, but I also think it opens him up for one-on-one opportunities, and that's the bit of growth in his game I think that'll take him to be a world-class player, because I think that's his potential. I really do. And it was great to see him get a run and play so well. He'll have huge confidence, I think, going into the games. But that's the growth in the game, and I think that's the growth in the game for Gary Ringrose that I've been talking about for a couple of years now as well. Is I think those two guys have the potential to be absolutely world class, but they have to bring the guys outside them into the game.
Yeah, and Rory, one other aspect of the performance that's gotten a lot of attention, I guess, was Johnny Sexton in the captaincy role, and I guess in real time it looked like he was having some pretty fiery exchanges with Rowan Potter, or maybe exchanges that they didn't seem to be on the best of terms. Subsequently, I guess a lot of people have focused in on him in the second half when he was inquiring with the breakdown, that it was a good example of a player or a captain, dealing with the referee. Like, what did you make of his display in that regard at the weekend and over the first two weekends?
Yeah, I mean, these things are interesting. I mean, there was no major calls. It wasn't a tight game, so it wasn't as if Johnny's decision making really came into question. I think he probably turned down points relatively early in the game. These are the things that when we review games, that you kind of, if they're tight, they come into contention. If Ireland are winning by but then it was a 14-point win, or should be more. It would have been. It's a tighter game, these things are much heavier scrutinised. When you're winning, these things always look good. I think Johnny Sexton's improved his communication with referees. He's come probably from a bad starting point, considering, I think he's getting a lot, while he's getting praise over this side of the Irish sea, there's been a lot of stick in the English media for the way he's constantly in their ears, the way he gesticulates. So it rubs some people the wrong way. But I think he's made a very good start to his captaincy. I would have favoured James Ryan for the captaincy more on age terms. I think, Johnny Sexton is the right captain in the wrong World Cup cycle. But I think he's a good captain. He's a leader by example. You can see the players believe in him, and I think he relishes being out in front of the team in the media side of things as well. I think he likes being the spokesperson for the team on in the week of games and after games, and he's very, very good at that as well. So I think he's made a really good start, and then you can see that the players, really, it's no great surprise that the players, still have huge respect for him. And I think he has responded to being backed by Andy Farrell by performing very well, despite the fact that he's such little game time under his belt.
I think he's always done that though, Rhodes, hasn't he? Like, I would say one thing about it. Like, I did think Will makes a good point about that first exchange in the first half, particularly around the try. That concerns me a little bit. I think there's room to grow. I think, like the team, Johnny has only just got the captaincy, so I think I hope he's not reading all the press, because I thought he kind of got that one wrong, and I think that's the little bit of growth. But I think he's only just starting in the role, so we have to give him time, no matter how experienced he is. That for me,
captained a good bit for like Leinster as well.
Sporadically enough, I think this is a bigger stage. It's more pressure. The stakes are higher, and you're more scrutinised. I think that's absolutely, I could say that unequivocally. I think, and I think I'd be surprised if you argue me on that one. There's more pressure, I think, and it is harder to influence the referees at this stage. I think they're better, and I think what becomes more important is the relationship with them, how you manage it, how you feel out the different scenarios. And that to me was a scenario where they'd looked at it again. I understood once he asked again to make sure, are you checking the right pass? But he did it a few times, and that was done. To me, that didn't help the case. I thought it just, you need to retreat at that stage and make sure that you don't damage the relationship, because there'll be other times in the game where, like in the second half, I thought he managed that beautifully, and he got way better and grew into it, and was the relationship was good at that point. But that one for me, you need to have your finger on the pulse. And I thought most great captains will kind of draw back at that stage and say, look, I'm not going to annoy him. He's made his decision on this. They're not going to look back. I've made it. It's on the record, me questioning it. To me, that's as far as I can go with it at this point. Doesn't benefit me getting further into that. I think he'll get better at that. I hope he doesn't read the paper. I hope he looks at those interactions and says, how can I get better in that? Because that's going to be an important role for him, particularly because he has to manage this, I suppose, view around him that he is combative with the referees, and that's something that he has to work on. Referees will know that. So I think that's something that he could look at again and say, did I manage that as best I could? My suggestion on that one is no. I thought the second half was a better, I think, template for him going forward.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on how he interacts at Twickenham anyway. Rory, what did you make of the back row? Obviously, it had a good day out, and then with a view to later on in the championship, you have CJ Stander, who's been playing number 8 since Caelan Doris went down after 5 minutes. Peter O'Mahony, who's been at 6, and now Doris was retained in that in Ireland's training camp this week. Max Deegan was sent back to Leinster, which shows that Doris is maybe ahead of him in the pecking order. Do you expect Stander and O'Mahony to hold on there after playing the bulk of the first 2 weeks?
I think that's the only selection question going into next week, and I don't know the answer. I think O'Mahony played very well. I thought he looked way more physically at it than he has done for quite a while. I thought he was winning collisions. He was winning physical battles against players that he maybe hasn't. Even he was carrying higher. He wasn't kind of doing that thing where he almost goes to deck before the tackle comes in and gets the ball back quickly, but hasn't really made any gains. I thought he was throwing his body around a little bit more than he has done for some time. He's winning turnovers. He's winning lineouts against the head. It's going to be very hard to leave him out, because I think Stander, whether it's 6 or 8, is in the team. He's one of the players of the championship so far. So I think that for Ireland to move their game on, I think Doris comes into the team. Whether it's this week or beyond, I think Doris is the long-term number 8. He's a more all-round footballer than CJ Stander. And I think in the tighter game against England, I think having a ball-playing number 8 rather than a guy who will just relentlessly run into contact and wins his fair share of collisions on both sides of the ball and has become this unbelievable breakdown threat. But I think he can do all of those things from 6 and do them quite well. Whereas I think Doris is your thoroughbred number 8, and I do want to get him into the team. But I think it would be very harsh. It's a really interesting test of where Andy Farrell is going with his selection. Whether he's, he's talked about picking guys on form, and he's stayed very, very faithful to the kind of the old soldiers who've been there before, and they've rewarded his faith with some big performances on the back of that. But this one's going to be very interesting, because he's clearly a fan of Doris. He wouldn't have thrown him in at Scotland. Unless he was, if he wasn't. So that's going to be a big call. Like I think maybe we'll see Doris come off the bench against England and then maybe start against Italy.
Yeah, it's an interesting selection dilemma for Andy Farrell. And on CJ Stander, I know you weren't that impressed in week 1, even though he did get man of the match. 2 man of the matches in a row now.
I don't know who's picking these things, to be honest with you.
Well, Alan Quinlan, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. There you go. Queenie looking after the back row, Munster lads. No, look, I thought he was good. There's no doubt in that. I thought the best player on the pitch was Andrew Conway. I thought he had some unbelievable touches. I thought he finished his try very well. I thought some of the regathers from the kicks were brilliant. I thought his kicking was excellent. His tackling was superb. He was the player for me, the best player on the pitch on the day. I thought Standard was good. I thought Peter O'Mahony was excellent. I thought he was really good. He's a moments guy. Like, I don't think Pete is going to be a guy like they're kind of different players. I think CJ would probably give you, a lot of carries, a lot of, he's very robust throughout the whole game. He's going to win a lot of collisions. Pete to me is a big game player. Look, he definitely wasn't the form guy on selection. I think you would have picked one of the Leinster guys, I think, at 6 if you were going to do that, because they were playing better than both him and CJ. To be honest with you, that was a surprising selection, but I think after the performance on the weekend, I thought he was one of Ireland's best players. I thought he was brilliant. I thought some of the line-out steals, like he's such a threat at the front of the line-out. Like, they're big, big moments for a team. And even those ones where he's kind of disrupting, where you have to, make a throw to the middle or the back when you're, if it's bad conditions or whatever it is. I just thought he was brilliant. I think he has to stay in the team. And I think that's a real dilemma that they have now between CJ, who's playing very well, who's got 2 man of the matches, even though I just don't agree with that stuff. I think the amount of people on Twitter going, "Oh, just see who got man of the match." I said, I don't really care who got man of the match. I know what I see on the rugby pitch. I thought Peter O'Mahony had a bigger impact on the game than CJ actually on the weekend. I thought he was unbelievable. And I couldn't see it dropping him. Plus, he's a specialist 6. I'd always have someone who's playing as a specialist in my team versus someone who's kind of a makeshift 6, no matter how well they're playing. And Peter O'Mahony's vastly, he's a huge amount of experience, the same as CJ. So if it comes down to a decision between Doris and Stander, I think he'll go with Stander. I agree with Rudds there. I think that's what he'll do. But if he does that, I wouldn't be dropping CJ over Peter. Would be my decision.
It'll be interesting, Andy.
If I was picking it now,
yeah. It's a week to think about it anyway.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
And Rory, just on that squad, that there 13 players released back to the provinces today. I think he's picked a 23-man training camp panel for later in the week. Was there anything in that announcement today that you thought was interesting, particularly, or gave an indication either to Andy Farrell's thinking or players who maybe aren't as far up the pecking order as you may have maybe thought?
I think we kind of can see the established hierarchy in the back row, because I think Deegan does have a little bit of a way to go before he gets ahead of Doris, even though he's been really, really good for Leinster. At the same time, he gets a chance to impress against the Cheetahs this weekend. Kelleher, so he's kept only one hooker. He's released Ronan Kelleher and Dave Heffernan, but Kelleher needs games. He needs a start because he hasn't played. I think if Kelleher hadn't got injured when he did, he could well be starting in these games, albeit Rob Herring's played very well, particularly last weekend. I think Addison's presence is very interesting. I don't know, was it related to Robbie Henshaw's failed HIA, but I think Addison has a lot to offer this Irish team. I think when Luke talks about that second distributor, there's a player who could potentially fulfill that role, whether it's a 13 or 15. But the problem he has is he's had this calf trouble. He always seems to pitch up to Ireland camp with some sort of an injury. It never seems to be important enough to include in an injury bulletin. But then when he's left out of the team, it always seems to come up that he hasn't been able to train fully. And I think Andy Farrell will be one of those coaches who prizes your ability to be able to pitch up a training and go through it. So it's probably a big week for him. But I can't see him. With Ringrose out, I just don't see Henshaw dropping out of the team unless he's got a more serious injury that we know about. And I don't see him messing with that back three. Addison's probably the more all-round footballer than Larmour, but Larmour's the most dangerous attacker in the team along with Conway. And he's having a really, really good season. So Addison's obviously in their thoughts. He's been kept there for a reason. He probably could have done with a game for Ulster as well, but they've decided to keep him down in Cork for that couple of days camp. But to be honest, the only change I could potentially see to the team is that back row change. Maybe Addison is a better option than Earls at number 23, but then I thought Keith Earls did quite well at the weekend as well. So there may be an injury we don't know about. That's always the thing with Ireland. Although this regime is a bit more open about that sort of stuff.
Well, just the last thing I wanted to bring up with you guys before I let you go, Rory, is there was a report last week that South Africa are apparently being lined up to maybe join the Six Nations after the next World Cup. Surprising report, albeit it's kind of moving that way in terms of their clubs coming up to play in the Pro 14. If that was do you think that would be a good idea? Do you think that's something worth exploring, Luke?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the time difference thing is always a big advantage for them. It is a big trip down there, but I mean, I think they'd be an unbelievable addition to it. I think it would freshen up the Six Nations a little bit. I think we probably end up. The problem for it is that with the Rugby Championship the way it is, like it really puts that under pressure. Like that model is creaking anyway, and financially they're really struggling. So it makes sense for them to want to come up here. I think they're the only one that really makes it. I think they also have a very big lift in terms of the time differences as well. So yeah, look, it'll be very interesting to watch that one play out. Whether or not it transpires,
the championship or the tradition of the
history.
So
I just to me that it's young enough as well. That I mean, what is it? Is it 20 years old? Is this
Six Nations?
No, not Six Nations. Sorry, obviously the Five Nations we've had forever. You know what I mean? I'm more thinking of in those respects. I mean, how old is the Tri Nations?
I think it was started after the World Cup in '95. Or
do you know what I mean? So what is it? 25 years.
Yeah,
it's not. It's not around a huge amount of time. And the model, they're under pressure. Like Australia are really dying a death as well in terms of that. Like if they leave, God, it would really hurt. It would really, really hurt the game down there. And like what happens then? Do we end up coming back towards this kind of World Rugby League or whatever it is? Do we do something like that?
I think
I don't. But I'm not sure the Six Nations teams will want to accommodate that. I mean, they're all doing very well financially. The game isn't dying up here; it's dying down there. So it's no surprise that one of the teams wants to join, and South Africa is the best fit for that. So look, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, at this point. I'd love to see another team in there, but where do they fit into the schedule, which is probably already overcrowded as it is up here? Like rugby's not like soccer; you can't just play, 40, 50 games a year. You can't do it. People will just creak and break. So, how they fit that and how they manage that. I mean, look, Italy at this point. They just haven't really moved on. Now, do we see some green shoots in their club game? Yes, we do. But it just hasn't really been reflected in performances in the Six Nation. And how much value do they add? They end up being even in the Heineken Cup, if you have an Italian team in your group, you're expected that two teams will go through from that group. So how much longer do we accommodate them? How much longer can we actually, do we actually try and swap them in with South Africa? Do we end up putting them in a competition with Georgia or something like that, and the winner comes into the six, a Seven Nations if you like? I don't know. There's loads of permutations on this, and I think the Six Nations teams will probably say, do we need to change?
Yeah, Rory, just two questions, I guess. How likely do you think this is? I think it was an interesting report in the Mail from I think Chris Foy and Matt Hughes, who are usually pretty good with this kind of stuff. And do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a good idea for international rugby?
Well, I think we're witnessing a realignment of the game from north south to east west, and I think South Africa fit into the kind of eastern hemisphere of that. So I think there will be a realignment, and I think whether people think it's a good idea or a bad idea, I think that's the way things are going. And particularly with, Luke's mentioned the schedule. CVC Capital, this hedge fund, private equity fund, have bought into the Premiership, the Pro 14, and they're about to buy into the Six Nations if it gets the green light. And if they're in charge of all three of those competitions, they'll have a big influence in how Europe is run as well. So they can do what they like with the schedule. So I think all of the traditions and things we expect around rugby are up for grabs in the next couple of years. I think the fact that they're bundling all the TV rights together means that we're probably going to go off free to air in the next couple of years, which is another big risk that I don't think people have quite appreciated yet. So I think there's a lot on the table. So I mean, from a tournament point of view, I think you'd lose the tradition. I love the Six Nations. I love the traditions around it. I love seeing Welsh and Irish people getting together over the weekend and the annual, pilgrimage that people make. But in the cold hard reality of international sport and professional sport, how kind of viable is that in the long term that you have six countries, three of whom are pretty small markets competing against each other in the same thing every year. And while it is very successful, money begets money. If you can go into a new market and spread the load and widen the TV deal by bringing in South Africa, they're going to want to do that. So I think there was a reason two South African teams came into the Pro 14 a couple of years ago. It wasn't just for the sake of the Cheetahs and the Southern Kings. It was almost like a test case to see how this would go. It was a kind of a move towards realigning South Africa with the Northern Hemisphere teams. I think that's the direction of travel. I don't know. I mean, I see there's been kind of reports refuting there's been people refuting those reports. But I would say there's no smoke without fire on this one. I think that's the direction we're moving in. It might take a couple more years to get there, but I think rugby as we know it in 2020 will look very, very different in 2030. I think we're in for a massive decade of change, and all of these sort of things. Like, we're going to see the kind of New Zealand, Australia move more towards, the west coast of the States, and Japan, the Pacific Islands. That's the kind of direction that they'll be realigned with. That's a much better, easier TV sell because it's all in one time zone. So I think there's a lot of play, a lot of moving parts going on. And at the end of a very long-winded answer, I don't know if it's a good idea, to be honest. I like what we have, but I completely understand that the game has to move on and develop and grow, and that it needs money to do that.
Yeah, and South Africa as well. They can't just have all their players back for a World Cup, for a World Cup year. I think the game there, if you look at it, they have so many players playing in Europe. I think that'll probably bring back into balance a little bit, and probably create another rugby powerhouse, not just for a World Cup year, but for the 4 years, within, because there's so much rugby to be played, and it's hard to, I think, gather a kind of sticky audience, if you like, of people who are going to stay watching the game consistently with you all the time. If the normal day-to-day rugby stuff isn't good, you want to have a good provincial setup like Ireland. Ireland have a lot of people watching rugby all the time because the provinces are playing well and the setup is good. England and France very similar. Wales are struggling a little bit, but seem to keep getting it, for the national team. But there's lots of people watching rugby there regularly in Wales, I think, even if it's not, one of the provincial sides. But South Africa are really struggling there. They are really struggling, and they shouldn't be, because they've so much quality. And if the quality was back, you'd have to think you'd get a crowd in there regularly, and they should be able to do that. So there is an argument there to say, well, we can't just have South Africa there once every 4 years as a real power where everyone's playing there. You know what I mean? So this could be a way of maybe rebalancing that and bringing a bit of money back into the game there, whereby those clubs could compete on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, trips to Joburg would certainly be interesting every
not
second.
Joburg.
Okay, maybe not. And definitely with CVC involved now, potentially in the Six Nations, there'll definitely be some changes over the coming years. Rory, thanks so much for making so much time on your day off for us.
Cheers, really Rhodes. Thanks a million. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, lads.
Thanks, Rory.
Bye.
Well, we're delighted to be joined on the line now by Rhys Ruddock. Rhys, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi guys, yeah, not at all, no worries.
Our second Ruds of the night, we had Rory O'Connor on us as well, so I'll have to distinguish you some way. I'll call you the Rudser for the rest of the show.
Think you just call him Scrudsy, I think, when you rang him up there. So I don't know.
No one else will get that. No, Ruds, listen, thanks a million for coming on and making the time. I know you guys are probably I suppose you're back into the thick of it now, are you?
Yeah, no, it's been good. Obviously had a little bit of time off with the 3 weeks with no games, so a little bit of time off to rest and recover, and then we got back into training last week. But it's nice to have a game on the weekend to focus on now, and things have kind of ramped up a bit, ready for that on the weekend, so everyone's excited.
Were you enjoying the nice weather yesterday, were you?
Yeah, no, it was definitely one of the highlights of my career, going out into the hailstorm the last 2 days. And,
I know you love that stuff, man. You're made for that.
No, I don't know. The ears aren't liking it, and all the bumps and that. So
fair enough.
Yeah, I shouldn't have shaved my head. It's a bit cold.
I don't think you've got a choice shaving the head, man. I'm closely following behind you as well. But yeah, look, it's an unfortunate. It's unfortunately what happens when we get older. It's a crying shame. Yeah, my blonde locks long gone.
Yeah, Rhys, what's the last couple of weeks been like for you? Obviously, I'm sure you're very disappointed not to be involved in the Six Nations, especially you're probably playing as good rugby this season as you've had, throughout your career. So how have you found the last couple of weeks? I guess, as you said, you've had 3 weeks without a game, which I guess you're probably crying out for rugby at the moment, given how well you've been playing.
Well, yeah, obviously hugely disappointed not to be involved. Especially, this time of year, Six Nations, you're always buzzing and hoping that you'll make the squad and get an opportunity. And then I suppose there was such excitement as well with, new coaches coming in, and had a little bit of time together in December. And I was just, really hoping to put my hand up and be involved. So, it was definitely a really disappointing period. And, I was kind of a bit down about that. But at the same time, I kind of spoke to Faz and had a good conversation with him and got a bit of direction, and I kind of felt, although I'd been playing fairly well, I still felt like I wasn't playing my best rugby, and a few areas in particular that I was really excited about the opportunity to get a lot better, and we kind of agreed that would be something that would put me in a better space to work my way into the squad in the future. So just having that clarity was good, and I suppose I found out the week of the Treviso game and was coming off the bench there, and I suppose that was my first opportunity to start that process and put a few things right, and I felt like I did okay then. And it's just unfortunate that we've had a 3-week break to not be able to take it a step further. So that's why I think myself and a load of other lads are looking forward to the opportunity to get back on the pitch. It's been a long time, and as a group, and then the individuals who have some disappointment as well will be looking forward to trying to improve and put the right foot forward this weekend.
And Rhys, it's you mentioned kind of the December camp, I suppose, that you were involved in. Talk to us a little bit about the new setup. We're all kind of trying to figure out, when we're watching the games, what kind of team are Ireland going to be? Are they going to change much? What was your sense of it? I know you're obviously you were only in for a few days, but what was your sense of it in there? Is there kind of excitement around what the guys are trying to build?
Yeah, it was only a day and a half, and because we were, it was a game week for the province, we didn't do a huge amount on the field, but definitely there was a load of excitement, and I think, there was some new ideas, and obviously you got new coaches and then people in different roles as well. So there was a lot of new ideas brought to the table, and I think whenever that happens in the squad, people get excited about it, and it's a new challenge. You're expected to do things slightly differently. You're expected to, I suppose, perform slightly different skills and in a slightly different way, and that type of challenge, we only had a day to do it in training, but I'm sure the guys who are in the squad at the moment, they're being challenged all the time and encouraged to develop those things and improve. And it looks like from the game so far that everyone's buying in and they're challenging each other, and they've got 2 good results on the back of it.
And from the little bit you were around the team, was Andy Farrell kind of different to what he was when he was an assistant coach? I don't know if it's kind of easy to tell that kind of thing in terms of, I know it's just a new job title, and I'm sure a lot of it was quite similar to what he might have been. He obviously would have been talking more because he's the head coach. But was he carrying himself differently? I don't know. Did he have a different aura being the head coach this time around?
Not really. I suppose he's the main man picking the team, so that might carry a little bit of a different aura, more in terms of the perception that we have. But in fairness to Faz, even when he wasn't the head coach, he always had a real aura and kind of an intensity when he spoke, and I suppose that was no different when he stood up at the front of the room as the head coach. He still had that, and I suppose you want to go out and play for someone like that who can just have that kind of aura and motivates the players the way he does. So it's good.
And Rhys, talk to us a little. This is kind of a little bit off topic, but Big Mike headed over to the Ospreys. They're obviously in a little bit of trouble at the moment. Have you talked to him much? I've been talking to him here and there, but how's he getting on with the challenge over there? Tough enough, I think. I would surmise from what I was chatting to him.
Yeah, I was actually just on the phone to him there. I hadn't caught up with him in a while, like a week or so properly. So I told him I was going to be speaking to you. He told me to pass on his best wishes to you, Lukey. So no, he's in good form. Obviously, it is a big challenge, and they've having a very difficult season at the moment. But I think, I don't know, for him to get an opportunity to go into a team like the Ospreys. As well, they've gone back, and that my parents are living in the same house that we would have lived in when we were younger.
Oh, really? Oh.
And my dad obviously would have played for Swansea and coached Swansea, so a lot of big connections to the area and Swansea Rugby Club, which is now part of the Ospreys, obviously. So, it's a really good opportunity for him, and as a family, we're really proud and excited for him.
Yeah, but, it's a chance to make a big difference, isn't it? From a place that's really, the Ospreys has been, well, bar the Scarlets really, but it's been the real shining light, or had been the real shining light in Welsh rugby. Now, I know there's challenges with, the different provincial kind of setup in Wales, and people kind of being maybe not exactly drawn to the new club. There was big rivalry before they set up the club between kind of both factions, and then obviously there's big clubs around that still get huge support week in, week out. But there's a chance to make a big impact there. He must be excited about that. Yeah,
and from speaking to him anyway, one of the first things he said is traditionally anyway, that would be a real hotbed of Welsh rugby. like I would have played for the underage teams there when I was younger as well, and just there's no shortage of talent coming through traditionally through the years. Like there's so many people playing rugby there and well coached at underage systems and all this. So there's loads of talent down there, and I'm sure there will be for many years. So he's excited about that, the potential to I suppose have a similar kind of setup to Leinster in terms of all the young players coming through academy, local, homegrown players that are going to buy into things massively, So that's something that he's excited about from speaking to him. There's loads of young guys there who, with the right coaching, have the potential to step up in the next few years and, I suppose be a big part of their local club. So that would be good.
And in terms, let's just switch back to maybe you for a little bit. So like you get this feedback from Andy Farrell about, maybe some areas to improve in your game to help you get in the team. Do you kind of, I know some people you'd have a great relationship with with Leo, and I'm sure Stuart seems to be very instrumental with lots of the guys in the setup and, very involved in helping them get better. Do you kind of communicate that with them and say, listen, what do you think? Or, can you have you a few drills or anything like that can maybe help me out with this or help me improve on these things? Do you have that line of communication with the Leinster guys to, I suppose, help you get back in the Irish team?
Yeah, definitely. Kind of the stuff that me and that Faz would have relayed to me, and the feedback was kind of along the same lines of what I was already thinking myself in my own game. So I suppose as disappointing as that it is not to be in the squad, at least it reinforces, your own beliefs and where you think you need to improve. And I suppose that's double the reason to go after those areas. Not only do you feel it yourself, also the coach is telling you the same thing. And then, in fairness to Leo and Stuart, they're both very good at when something like that happens. I don't know, you come back from a Six Nations, a World Cup, or you don't make the cut. They're straight away looking to meet up and I suppose see where your head's at, see what the plan is over the next period, whatever that may be, and coming up with a plan on how to work on that. So met with both Leo and Stuart and got some brilliant sort of feedback and ideas from them as well. And I think a lot of it was aligned with the conversation I already had. So it's great to have that, just the opportunity to go in and talk to them. And at the end of the day, they're the people that I've been working with the last 3 weeks since found that news, and then also over the next block of 3 games. So to have them all understanding where you're at and what you're going after, what you want to work on, and supporting you in that sense is huge,
Yeah, Rhys, what were the areas that you identified yourself? Because you seemed on the surface to be playing, really good rugby. But so I'm interested.
We both had you picked.
Yeah, so I'm interested that you kind of thought that I have a few areas. What did you think that you needed to work on? Because you seem to be in your best form.
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like over the most recent games, just felt like I'd maybe been working really hard, getting through a lot of work, which tends to be kind of a staple in my game. I get through a lot of work and maybe put out big numbers in terms of carries and tackles, but I just felt like I was maybe a little bit less effective. So collision winning both sides of the ball, not just making a number of tackles, but how effective I can be, the physicality I can bring, and then the same on the other side of the ball, really, in terms of winning meters after contact and leg drive, and just, I suppose, not just getting a number of carries, but how effective I can be on each one. So I suppose those are the main 2 areas that I would have targeted, and then speaking to the coaches and working on, like you say, there's little drills you can do, and little, I suppose, even just having a focus area, like what am I going to do in training this week, like 1 or 2 things either side of the ball, and then just naturally then that if you do it all week in training, it tends to come into your game on the weekend. So looking forward, as I said, to getting out on Saturday and hopefully putting in place the things I've been working on the last couple of weeks.
And Rhys, look, you've just grown up in a rugby family, so you'd have to have an understanding of the game. Otherwise, I'd be very worried about you, to be honest, right? No, but just in terms of these kind of moments in the game, right? Because I always feel like, yes, I would completely agree with you. You know, oftentimes very underappreciated in terms of the amount of work you get through, right? But you're talking about making the kind of big impacts, and there's certainly no doubt, given the athlete you are, you can have those moments. What do you, to your mind, is it trying to find yourself in better positions? Is it like working on your footwork, or like how do you go about kind of making yourself better? I'm always interested to hear how players, like what they think about trying to make bigger impacts, or like what is it? Do you need to find yourself in better positions, and how do you go about doing that? Are you thinking about your game? Are you talking to Stuart about, look, do I need, where should I be here? Are you talking to Leo about, like, how do you get better at those things, rather than say, obviously you can work on the drills, but what kind of technically do you think about to try and get yourself better?
Yeah, I think in terms of like defensively, like a couple of little things would be like I just found like maybe sometimes just not trying to necessarily defend. Like you're in a system at the end of the day, you got people either side of you, not trying to cover, say, 3 defenders and therefore not being committed to the tackle. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So like kind of overdoing it, trusting the guys around you. Okay.
Trusting the people around you, committing to it, and therefore being 100% into a tackle and being more effective. And then on attacking side, just I suppose being more dynamic. So like moving on to the ball. My body height is a big one. When I'm playing well and carrying well, I tend to be running a little bit lower to the ground and not, just a bit more effective in that sense. So just concentrating on moving on to the ball, being a bit more dynamic in those first couple of steps, and then body height and also footwork, I think, is a big one for me. When I'm carrying the ball well, I tend to have that footwork before contact, and when I'm less effective, I tend to be a bit more just straight up and down. So just keeping a combination of those 3 things, depending on the situation and how much time you have on the ball and all those things. So it's not like not big things, it's just little things that you can make sure, if I'm doing them every single time, if I'm thinking about them and adding them to my training, adding them to my game, then I think consistently it'll have a big effect on the weekend.
And I don't mean to bring the mood down too much, but just a quick question.
As if you haven't already.
No, sorry. Look, I think it's so interesting. It's so interesting to hear, I think. But look, I love hearing about it. And I think people who are into their rugby, people who listen to the pod are generally into their rugby. It's just really interesting to hear, I think, how a person goes about the day job and how they think about getting better all the time. Because like for us, like, I think everyone knows my view around the selection. I was unbelievably surprised you weren't included. So it's interesting to hear how people rebound and what they do to keep positive, because that's what you need to do in these scenarios. You need to figure out things that make you can say, okay, well look, I can't just go down the dumps here. I need to figure out how I get better, how I get back in the team. So that was what it is. We're not trying to bring the mood down. It's just interesting to pick your brain, my man.
Well, I was going to
absolutely.
Sorry, I was going to say it might get a little more depressing before it gets a little more uplifting. I was just going to ask maybe quickly, obviously it's been a couple of months now, but when you think back to the Japan experience as a whole, you were kind of pushing to get into the team and you were in and around the squad, and the team didn't do as well as they would have liked, obviously. Like when you look back on the whole experience now, is it just one you'd like to forget? How do you look at it?
There was obviously huge elements to it which were hugely disappointing, and a little bit of a slump maybe after that personally, just because it was, you invest so much of your energy, like a lot of your goals are based around that one tournament and that one period of time. For me, making the squad, and then when you finally, get the news that I was in it, obviously it was pretty tight for me whether I'd make the squad or not. And then getting into the squad, it was to try and perform on the world stage was like an opportunity that was something I was really excited about, and I really, really wanted to take those opportunities every time I got on the field. So, I look back at it and I think I didn't, maybe personal level, I didn't get maybe as much game time as I would have liked to or seen in my own head. But then I look back and I think of the game time I got, there were some aspects of my performances which I was hugely happy with. And like I said, it's a chance to perform on the world stage, and I felt like I played some some of my best rugby in some of those games. So those are positive aspects on a personal level. And then it was an absolutely great experience with a great group of people. I'm sure one that I will always remember, the moments on and off the field, in an amazing country. Like it really was special, and to be involved in the World Cup. But then at the end of the day, the bottom line is we underperformed, and we didn't get what we wanted at the end of it. So massive disappointments. But I suppose it is a learning curve, and I'm 29, so hopefully a few more years left in me, and an opportunity to take learnings from them in the harshest kind of environment on the biggest stage. The disappointment from there, to be able to learn from it and bring it into your career in the future is, I suppose, another positive to come out of it. So yeah, there's some really disappointing things looking back at it, but I'll definitely remember some positives from it.
Yeah, because interesting you mentioned there that you said there was maybe a little bit of a slump personally afterwards in terms of just being disappointed, because I guess unlike other tournaments, if you lose, it's generally like the following season, like say the Champions Cup final, you lose to Saracens, you can come back again. The World Cup being every 4 years, does that make it more devastating in the aftermath immediately? Like you can't, it's hard to park because it's just such a long way to wait to be able to go back and rectify it.
Yeah, 100%. And like at the end of the day, it's only a few months in one season, and it's every 4 years, like you say. So the chance of you even being fit at that stage, in a game like rugby, is there's a chance that you won't be fit. There's a chance that, I don't know, 4 years is a long time. A lot can change. So to have that opportunity to be there and have a crack at it, and not get everything that you wanted out of it is hugely disappointing. It's a long time to wait, like you say.
To move to more upbeat matters, you did get to work alongside your brother Kieran as well in the setup, and there was like a great moment, I guess, that broke the tension during the tournament when you and Kieran were both out, for the media at the same time. It's such a great story. Like, how enjoyable was it to kind of be working with your brother in the squad?
Oh yeah, absolutely amazing. Like, obviously Lukey knows my brother, and he's such a great guy to work with in terms of like his attitude and his skill set that he brings now as a coach and a strength and conditioning coach to the environment. So I was like, on a personal level, I was just so proud and happy that he was involved, and also to be able to have a family member, someone you're really close to out there when you're away from home, away from loved ones and family, was awesome as well. Just to have him there to share the experience with was class. But also I was just so proud of him. He did a great job, and to work with him, like last time I worked with him in any sort of environment like that was under 20 World Cup out in Japan, or it would have been 10 years previous. So we were playing together at that stage, and it was amazing, but not quite the same, not taking the field together, but to experience everything with him over there was I'll always remember that. It was brilliant.
And Rhys, not many people will know that you've kind of, on the off-field side, I suppose you've kind of helped further yourself, or you've, I suppose, maybe delved a little bit into maybe working alongside Kieran in his gym. Have you kind of further? I know that you were kind of been doing a few sessions here and there, and you'd kind of done a bit of the learning and that. Have you furthered that anymore? Have you any more thoughts around whether you'd like to? Because obviously preparing for life after rugby is so important. Have you done any thought on that, or any more work on it?
Yeah, well, like I kind of did a year where I was spending some time studying a little bit of strength and conditioning stuff and doing work experience with Kieran in the gym once a week, and obviously really lucky to have my brother involved there, so I could get access in there and have a place to go every week to learn and sort of gauge whether it would be something I'd be interested in. So I've kind of parked that for the meantime. It was a big commitment, coaching in there once a week for 4 hours a night or whatever it was. So I think I got a load out of it, and it was great learning. But I'm hoping to continue on a business course I started instead. So we'll see what comes of that down the line. But
You might see me along the way. Yeah, we'd Fergie in with us in AIB. He is seemed to be doing loads of work around preparing himself. So look, it'd be it's it's good to work the mind as well, because I mean it's such an insular thing. We've talked about loads of things there, like the World Cup. That's really it's pretty much 5 months of preparation to go on that thing, and you're in a small community. You're working hard on getting yourself better in better condition and working on the rugby. But it is nice to have something outside it, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, well, those, especially like you say, those periods of time and Six Nations and these things where you're away from home, it can be quite all-consuming in terms of you're away from your normal life, home life, family, friends, all this stuff, and you're completely consumed by the task at hand in your job and playing rugby. So to have something else to focus the mind on can be positive, and I'm probably not the best example, to be honest. Some of the other lads in the squad are a lot further down the track than me. Some of the young lads. You've a bit
of time left. I can't believe you're 29, man. The man-child just keeps going. He just keeps on keeping on. And listen, talk to us a little bit about some of the guys coming back in from Irish camp this week. I think there's some interesting, we have Ronan Keller coming back in, who I just think has been a trailblazer. Obviously himself and Sean Cronin. James Tracy fighting very hard. Obviously the Burno as well. There's a real competition for that hooker slot there, but he seems to maybe be a nose ahead at this point. I know he's been injured for a few weeks, but he's coming back in from Irish camp. We've Deegan coming back in from Irish camp. I mean, what do you make of those two young guys and I suppose the journey they're on? I mean, Deegan obviously is in a closer position to you. You might be able to comment as much on it, but I mean, they look like very exciting guys to watch, and I think both will have certainly some kind of part to play over the next 10 or 15 years in Irish camps and Irish teams.
Yeah, 100%. I probably could comment on Deegan more because I know more about the back row play.
Don't put him up too much, man. He's going to be your competition.
He is past me. So, look, they're both, obviously had huge starts this season, been playing class, and deservedly in the squad and playing really well. So, Ronan, obviously, more so this year, has really made his mark and got a lot of opportunity in taking it. And getting rewarded with his opportunity in the Irish squad. And then Max, in fairness, has been playing class for a number of years, really, for Leinster. When he's had the opportunity, he's been brilliant. He's such a talented player, such a good footballer, and I think he's year on year been adding to his game. He's a real all-rounder now, so he's only going to get better as well. He's still so young, you forget. And then even like Caelan Doris, I know. He's another young player who's been, the last few years he's been brilliant, but this year especially he's really taken his performance to another level, and obviously amazing for him to be involved, and also so disappointing for him to pick up the knock in the way he did. But he'll bounce back, and I'm sure he'll get another opportunity in this tournament and show everyone why he's there.
And how do you deal with some of the up and comers there you're competing with? I remember in the back row, we'd like the likes of Shane Jennings and Sean O'Brien dealt with some of the younger lads a little bit different. Are you in there kind of throwing your weight around and kind of the old war torn fella in the squad these days, beating up the younger lads, or how do you what's the relationship like there?
Well, I'm not doing a Jenno or a Shawnee on it and giving lads digs, no, threatening them. But
well, you have to be captain, I suppose, sometimes. So you have to have some kind of relationship with the lads next to you, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's just, it doesn't matter the age or whatever. If they're playing well, you've got to respect that, and you just got to, I suppose, focus on yourself and try and improve your levels of performance. But I think we're all very different players. Like Caelan's completely different player to Max. I'd be completely different to the two of them. So there's no. I suppose it's just about looking at yourself and trying to see what's the best version of myself that I can put myself forward and get back in the team sheet and playing my best rugby. So that's what I'm trying to focus on. Honestly, delighted for the young lads who had the opportunity. I think thoroughly deserved.
I just have two questions, Rhys, before we let you go. Thanks very much again for joining us. The first one is one of Irish rugby's greatest cliches that I actually want to put to you and see how true it is. Does Rhys Ruddock really love playing against French teams? Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I think I love playing it over in France as well, against French teams. I just think, like the atmosphere that's usually generated over in France playing against a French team is like a cauldron, and also just the physicality and the intensity that they bring.
We're both shaking our heads.
Luke's,
saying yes.
Luke's nodding along here.
So are you, unbeknownst to yourself. Yeah, we're just saying you just love, you always seem to play, I think, your best rugby in against the huge French packs. It always seems to bring out the best in you, I think.
Yeah, cheers. No, I definitely enjoy it anyway, and I get that excitement and I suppose anticipation of a physical battle, which I like to think, it brings out the best in me, and I think those physical games and playing against bigger packs and competing against them is something that I tend to enjoy anyway. So so far I've really enjoyed playing against French teams, whether it be like Toulouse or Toulon, Clermont away, these type of games. I've absolutely loved it. So hopefully we get a couple more of them down the years now.
And my last question, I guess, to finish on a more positive note after depressing you with some of our questions over the course of the interview,
right.
is I guess Luke mentioned it earlier, you have been around a while, but you're only 29, but just looking at some of the numbers, you've played 195 matches between Ireland and Leinster. You made your Leinster debut over 10 years ago. You played for Ireland almost 10 years ago. You've been on the road a long time as well. Overall, when you look at over the course of the last 10 years of your career, how happy are you with how you've done? Do you feel like you've gotten everything you've wanted out of it thus far? Do you look back and think there's still a lot more you have left to give? How do you assess it?
Yeah, ups and downs. I think there's been huge highs and huge lows, but I think every career is the same, and a lot of them come down to injury and timings of injuries, that you could be playing your best rugby up until very often I've picked up bad injuries in December where in playing in Europe, and they've put me out till kind of the end of the season where I'm not able to force my way back into the team. So I think those lows have been bad, where I've been playing my best rugby, absolutely everything going right for you, and then around December time you pick up an injury that pretty much writes off your season. So a lot of lows like that have kind of maybe hampered my progress, but then I think that's part and parcel of the game. And then some massive highs, and obviously things like captain in Leinster and captain in Ireland as well, playing in 2 World Cups, playing in Six Nations, all these things, like captain in Ireland on tours, and lots of special moments. So loads of positives and things that I'm really proud of, and I'm sure I will be when I retire. But I still feel there's loads more in me, and don't feel like I've put...
Man, you're 29. There's loads left in you.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's just been...
He just looks a bit old.
You just had an unbelievable start to your career. Yeah. Here, listen, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. I know you were in the middle of getting a rub down from the great Mike Carswell there to get you limber for the weekend. We wish you all the best making the, I suppose, the comeback trail, we'll call it. And look, you never know, you might end up in that Six Nations squad, particularly if you get back to that form you showed in the World Cup and just at the start of the season will end. So best of luck with that. Thanks a million for coming on, Rhys, okay?
Thanks very much.
Cheers, Rhys.
Cheers, Rhodes. Bye.
Bye.
And that's all we have time for this week on The Left Wing in association with Land Rover. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back next week with another podcast. And in the meantime, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, or listen on independent.ie. So until next week, thank you for listening, and goodbye.
The Left Wing Podcast in association with Land Rover. Whether you're headed to a match or a weekend away, there's plenty of space for your team and their gear in the new Discovery Sport.